Bismillah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today, I'm very thrilled to be joined by Brother Osama. Brother Osama, thanks so much for being here, man.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure and an honor. Finally made it to this compelling broadcast.
We finally did it, yeah.
Uh,
Man, I wanted to begin by saying I really appreciate you because um, you're like one of the OG supporters, like one of the original supporters. You reached out to me since the early days, and you were following the episodes and watching them. I think that's really cool. I really do. And
Thank you.
I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think I've always been curious, what exactly like allowed you to be that way? Because we've never crossed paths. We didn't know each other, but you were still like such a loving and
Yeah.
supportive person.
Oh man, no, I could appreciate hard work and it shows in consistency. And you're very consistent and you're, very compassionate. Your messaging is always positive. And those are things that are hard to keep consistent. So they're not a front, you're not faking it. And that's, I see as a beautiful thing. It doesn't matter what the person in front of you, what faith, what belief, what, interest they have. When you find a person as a genuine in, human being, you share that genuine human being side of yourself with them, and I feel like that's something that needs to be encouraged in this day and age in specific. This time where everything is very polarized. I feel like your efforts, if inshallah, you stay consistent doing this, for many years to come. I do see you becoming a very successful character in being able to reach the core principles of people that you interact with, and that's not easy. So, and I applaud it. You do it every time, mashallah.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Alhamdulillah, as they say.
Mhm.
And it's a real thing that yeah, I'm glad if I'm able to do that. But I definitely value that support that you gave. I was like, wow, this guy just, I don't even know him. He doesn't even know me, but he's just giving that love and
Alhamdulillah.
support. I think that's really cool because like that's just the way of being a Muslim, right? You just support the
Absolutely.
Muslims. You
Yeah,
just it is what it is.
absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, and they're doing it for many different reasons. And I think it's important that we consistently support each other in regions that are beneficial. And it's not about clout chasing, and it's not about, like, doing anything. It's just about being a good human being. And I do feel like you try to bring that out of the people that you interview as well. So alhamdulillah, like, it's easy to support something that's good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah. This made me think of something. A few days ago, I watched this movie called Juice. It's got Tupac in it.
Oh
I don't know if
man, come on.
you
I love
you
it. What
seen
are
the
you talking
film?
about, man? Are you kidding me, man? I love it. Classic.
Dude, there's this scene in this movie that I can't get out of my head, and it's um Tupac basically has a gang of friends, right? And they do a robbery and he shoots one of his friends.
Yeah.
Anyways, he ends up showing up to the mourning of that friend's family. Like the family's in
Yeah,
mourning after the funeral and whatnot.
yeah,
And he's just there as if nothing happened. He's hugging the mom, he's hugging the sister. It's like he was my brother. Raheem
yeah,
was my
yeah,
brother.
yeah, yeah,
And you see one of the other main characters, Q, he's
yeah,
just looking at Tupac, like baffled. He's
yeah,
shocked. Like, how is this guy doing this? And there's like this cold emptiness you see in Tupac's eyes. That scene is just so amazing because I think the beauty about
yeah.
movies is they show things that you have witnessed in your real life, but you can't put it into words.
Mhm.
And that scene is very much like that for me. And so where I was bringing this with was how do you think we should deal with people where they put on this front, right? that is so convincing to other people, but you know
Mm,
deep down, like, damn, they're cold
yeah,
hearted. That's all
yeah,
just a lie. No amount of empathy, no amount of kindness could convince them otherwise.
yeah. Man, that's hard, man. That takes us a dedication to be that kind of a deceitful type of individual. And when you see through it, it gives you value because you end up starting to know how to identify that trait in others, and then you start being able to, you know, uh, stay away from it easier. You're able to stay away from it easier when you know how to stay when you know how to identify it. So it's a tricky question because as a Muslim, we don't expose people's sins, right? We don't expose people like that unless we're asked in specific for if this person is going to be, someone that you know is asking about his qualities and their character, if they're going to get married to that person, if they're going to have a business relationship with that person, then they ask you your opinion. And in Islam, that's when you expose that person's, true colors that you know of. But otherwise, you pray for that person that they change, and at the same time, you be very vigilant from staying away from that kind of that toxic individual because they are oppressing themselves by lying to themselves and then oppressing everyone else around them by lying to everyone else around them as well. And you don't want to be around an oppressor like that because they're oppressing themselves so vividly. It's bound to rub off in some way on you for trying to just keep up as a happy person around them. So
Yes.
this distancing yourself away from them, make dua for them, and warn others if they're going to deal with them on any kind of professional, business endeavor or marital, situation. That is your duty. That is your duty because you have that responsibility. You know something that other people don't know. And if you're asked about it, you have to respond honestly to that question. So um, it's hard. It's hard, but try to stay away. That's all of
It
my advice would
is.
be.
It is. And I've been like trying to put it into words for myself in the past few days because it's like it's one of those things where it's, the pieces are there. It's like how do you put them together? What do I make of
Yeah.
it? I don't know. But that
Yeah.
scene, man, that scene from that film just keeps
Yeah.
coming back in my head. It's wild
And
that you
that's
know that movie too. It's crazy that you know
oh
it.
man, no, dude, that's like I grew up on those movies, man. New Jack City and Juice and Boys in the Hood and all the parodies of those movies. That's what I grew up with. I mean, I want to say like those were almost people that I knew that they were modeled
Interesting.
after.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I grew up in the 90s in the East Coast, so in Jersey City, which is across the river from New York City. And New York City at the time had a huge reputation for how bad it was, but for us that was home. It wasn't like we stayed out till 3 in the morning. We hung out with a lot of those same people that the movies kind of stereotype and um, that was just my comfort zone. Like we go out to eat and have fun and play card games and listen to music and all that in the street. You Good
Wow.
times. But
Yeah.
as a kid growing up, you don't see it as something like that until you live your life in other areas and you start seeing what a normal, I guess, lifestyle would kind of be. And then you start to appreciate those differences instead of hating them and trying to ignore those, and you start appreciating that you had that experience growing up because it gives you insight in life that other people don't have. Um, and you have more compassion. When you understand people, you're able to be more compassionate with people. And when you understand why people go through those struggles, like if you watch the movie, then you know why they did what they did. You saw their environment. Everyone had a deeper story behind them. Um, I don't know if you saw the movie Crash. but Crash is another movie that kind of brings random people from diverse backgrounds, and they all interact with each other for a sliver of a minute, but like their interactions with each other are very racially charged. But then when you go inside those individual lifestyles, you'll see that their individuality and their race that they kind of brought to the attention by the other person's antagonistic approach towards them, um, was like their normal everyday life. And so when people talk about, like, the ghettos and the thugs, and and they racially profile people and stuff like it's like it hurts me because I knew, or I know what that is like. That's a normal life for them. They don't understand what you understand because they didn't have those options. They didn't have those same opportunities that other people had. Their parents were hard workers, and if they weren't hard workers, they were not workers, and they were just coping with life's mental stresses in their own ways with drugs and other venting techniques. Uh, but they're profiled for that, and then they're banished from society as like these you know horrific people to be around, and you clutch your purse when they get near, and you lock your door when you see them in the corner, and um, those it's media has that impact, not only an artistic way to share that moment of share, like that moment that you captured, where you saw like a real uh cold-hearted human being, that moment that you captured in there. I can assure you, hundreds of people seen that movie and they didn't capture that moment. They captured other moments. And then even if they didn't capture other moments, then they captured a concept of how this whole society is portrayed. And that's the power of media, and that's what we gotta appreciate about it. And then
Yes. Our art interacts with people in different ways. And this made me think about your comics, man. I read your
oh,
comics, and I'm not just gonna toot your horn, I'm gonna be real with you. Like it was
okay,
good.
thank you.
It was really
Yeah.
good.
Oh man, I
And
appreciate that.
yeah, and I was like, damn, there's only like three of these? Because like by the third one, I was like, whoa, this world is really opening up. And what it was reminding me of was like when I was a kid, the art style and just kind of like some of the dialogue, it was making me think of this TV show that I really liked growing up called Martin Mystery. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but I
No.
was like, wow, like this is it kind of reminded me of that. And I wanted to
Interesting.
know like more of what is this world about? Who are these characters? How do they interact with each other's lives? But I'm
Yeah.
curious, what
No.
is Noon Comics, man? How did this all begin? How did you get
Oh
into
man.
making these stories?
Yeah, man. It's honestly, there's a lot to unfold with that one. It's a lot to unpack. The idea existed in my mind since I was probably like 15 years old. Just I imagined a world where, what if the Sahaba lived today in our day-to-day life? Like, what would they be like in their normal interactions, in the normal technology, in the normal world? And so I started to say that, okay, well, what if we had, I grew up reading comic books. I love comic books, man, like Spider-Man, all the Marvel, DC, Image. Like, I mean, I'm a geek in the comic book world. And so I always thought, like, why don't we have Sahaba stories? Why don't we have, like, we have them written, we have them audio, but why don't we have them like in a comic book, action packed? Because there's a lot of action in the Sahaba story. Like, you always find, a moment in their life where they were tested it with a specific, test that showed their true character, and then they became the epitome of that character.
Can you
So
give one example of that? I'm curious. That just kind
like,
of speaks to
like for
you.
like Ali radiallahu anhu, he was known for strength, right? He was a strong man, like physically, and he was a very strong individual. And people were scared of him, and whatnot. But then, we had like stories of and myths that like his sword weighed 70 pounds. When he swung it, it chopped the horse in half. And I mean, those were very exaggerated stories that we heard when we were growing up. But it reminded me of anime later on that I watched when I was younger. I don't know if you ever heard of Berserk.
No.
But Berserk is it's a crazy anime. Like, it starts off in the Middle Ages time, and it's a young kid that has like this huge sword that's like twice his size, and when he swings it, it just like chops whatever's around because it's just so heavy. and he finally gets it swung basically, and was able to chop people in half and horses in half. And so it reminded me, of like, man, that reminds me of the things that I heard about Ali radiallahu anhu. But then he became the epitome, and then it was like of the character of, it's not physical strength that is your strength. It is you controlling yourself, your emotions during the time of anger. When you're angry, controlling that anger and not lashing out on somebody, that is true strength. And so he became the person identified for that characteristical trait. And many Sahaba, like, Hamza, with courageous and courage during the time of his, tests, and Ammar ibn Yasir in his persistence, um, and Bilal, of course, in his persistence. Like, so many Sahaba had so many characteristical traits that they were just like glowing with that trait when you heard of them, right? And so, that being said, I was like, we watch Superman, and he is like, faster than a speeding bullet, that can leap, tall buildings in a single bound, and all of these things. And he's a Boy Scout at the end, right? Like, he's like this very, like, cheese, like, perfect smile, perfect everything, perfect personality, perfect manners, perfect everything. I'm like, we have that actually. We have Sahaba that are like that, and they were real human beings. They didn't wear a cape and their underwear outside of their, pants, but they were humans that were very much very powerful with all of those morals on their day to day. Never killed somebody without, without it being during the time of war or something like that. Like, they were very compassionate, very nice farmers, fathers. Um, and so, long story short, man, I wanted to see that in the comic book world. Then I grew up and I found out, like, okay, we can't draw the Sahaba. There's you can't, like, there's a one, scholar and one opinion that says you can, but you can't draw the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And so, to get around all of that, I said, you know what? Let's just make it in a futuristic, imaginary world. These are just regular people, but they'll have the stories similar to those of the Sahaba. And so you'll find in the characters, some of them will have glimpses of different Sahabas situations that are just exposed in like, through these characters, basically. Um, and so that's how it came up, basically. And long story short, it was inspired by manga and anime and comic books and Islam, all intertwined in a giant sushi roll.
That's a way to
So
put it. That's a way to put
yeah,
it.
yeah,
I think his name is Abdullah Oduro or something like that. He's a
yeah,
big.
check out Little Adoro, yeah,
Okay, that's so that is his name. Yeah. He came to my mosque one time and he was talking
yeah,
to the crowd and he's like, "Who here knows Superman?" Like nobody said anything. He's like, "Come on, guys, it's okay. You can raise your hand. It's not shirk." I burst
yeah.
out laughing. That was hilarious. But um, I've met people who I love superheroes. I think they're so cool. Especially like Spider-Man, Batman, the X-Men. I think they're just so
Oh yeah.
fascinating. But I've met people who are like, man, like, why are you into that? Like, that's so stupid and childish. But I look at them and I'm like, no, it's really not. Like, there's really deep symbolism ingrained in
Oh
those
yeah.
stories. And so I think it's awesome that, you did something like this, but from like an Islamic lens, this comic book universe, but it has like that Muslim element to it. I think it's very
Yeah,
cool. I also noticed a little bit of
I
like an
appreciate it.
Assassin's Creed element with
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
hoods and
yeah,
whatnot. Has that
yeah.
was that like a direct inspiration of
Uh,
any sort or
it's Assassin's Creed actually has a lot of Arabic influence in it naturally, and so the whole history of the Hashashin and all of that, like, and so they kind of go into that a little bit in one of their, I think, um, one of their arcs. They kind of go into the, like, the Arabic side of their um history, basically. Um, but no, I mean, it was based on the Moroccan thobe, mixed in with the Japanese style thobe, like how they wear their samurai, um, gear, like that robe that they wear, the samurai style. And it was just a mixture, just blending, Moroccan style thobe with the Japanese culture a little bit, with a Batman feel, kind of.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just the inspiration comes from a lot of different things, but um, Assassin's Creed was not one of them. I mean,
Hmm.
I did not like look at Assassin's Creed to that extent to kind of incorporate it in there, but I maybe my artist did. Because my artist also like he's an illustrator and he's a big fanatic of all of these cool things as well. So he knows all about like the X-Men, and when we got to talk about the vision of what I had in mind, he was on board super quickly because we kind of just like lined up with what we had in mind.
That's
So
epic. And what I love
yeah,
about this is something that you actually said in the beginning, like the consistency. Like this project, I'm sure there's still more going on. It's more to be
oh yeah,
developed, but like what you have right now, like wow, that's consistent and it's real. It's real. It's
uh,
tangible. Like you actually did
thank you.
that, and I admire that because there's a lot of talk. Like how cool would it be if I made a Muslim superhero universe? But nobody does it. But you actually
Yeah,
did it. That's
yeah,
very cool.
I appreciate that,
I'm
man.
curious
Thank
about the moment of when it hit you like, hey, I have to actualize this. When was that
you.
moment of realization? Was it some
Oh,
burning,
man.
itching desire inside of you?
There was a couple of trigger moments, um, and sadly they're when I'm reading comic books actually. So a couple of times, and if I knew this question was coming, I would have got these comic books out because like they're like somewhere within arm's reach over here. But basically there was like about it's just have I started to get back into comic books very recently. And I had this idea in my mind, to do this since I was 15 years old. I never did anything about it. But then one time during Ramadan, I think it was in 2017, I met this brother at the masjid, and he was telling me like, "Hey, man, did you ever hear about the Muslim sci-fi story contest?" And we were just chit-chatting, and I was like, "No, I have not. Like, what is this?" So Texas A&M has a division of Islamic sci-fi, and the head of the board of that division was this brother's ex-wife. And so she was trying to push this notion of creativity in of the sci-fi Muslim world. And I said, dude, that's exactly what I've been thinking of like since I was for a long time. He's like, man, if you hurry up and you give me a manuscript, I can submit it for you and you'll get into the contest. And if you get selected, they'll publish you for free in their book and you'll be, selected winner. And I was like, oh my God, yes, yes. So I rushed home, told my wife about it. My wife was like, "Man, you've told me about this several times. You've been telling me, like, do it, just do it. Look, come on, just do it. Let's go, let's go." And so she encouraged me, alhamdulillah, to actually like sit down and actually just jot it all down. And so I opened up Microsoft Word on my phone, just started typing out everything and just like the whole storyline of like what I thought it was going to be and this and that. And it was all from my phone. Um, I asked my wife to read it, to proofread it for me, and she had no time. She was in law school at the time, and she was getting into law school. She was studying for her LSAT, and so she was like, "I don't got time for this." So I was like, "Oh man, all right, let me just submit it." Anyway, I got rejected real quick. Um, they said that there was a lot of grammatical mistakes, and it was just too choppy, and it was too, it had some potential, but this just wasn't the time for it. It needed to simmer a little bit. And so I took it from there and I was like, you know what? They're absolutely right. I did rush it. Let me proofread it. When I started proofreading, I found all my grammatical mistakes, my spelling mistakes. And I was like, I'm so sorry I submitted it like this, man. Let me do better. And so I asked after I like proofread it and so I got, deep into it and expanded on it, made it bigger and larger. And I asked my best friend to read it. He's like, man, and he looks at it. This is too long, bro. I'm not going to read all this. And I was like, man, what would make a person want to read it? If I added a couple of pictures here and there. So I just got some Google images of some pictures of what I thought like the scene would look like and just added it on the top of the page before the words. And so he was like, okay, I could get into this a little bit. And he got past like the first 5 pages and started yawning right in front of me. And he's like, no, no, it's not your work. Trust me, it's not. It's just I'm tired or whatever. But I understood I was causing fatigue. I was causing reader fatigue. And so I started to say to myself, okay, how did I read so long? And like, oh yeah, I started with comic books, and their dialogue boxes are so small. And then you just want to flip the page, and you just want to see the colors, and you want to see the actions, you want to see all of this stuff. What if I did that for people? Would they want to read my work? And so I started to do that. And again, went back to my phone, found Batman in 700 different poses. And so I said, hi, I could use this. So I took like little cutouts of Batman and put his face and then like, made up a robot as an enemy and made these, and it just kind of like, it was in a desert field. And I showed that to my niece, who was like at the time, like 18 years. Oh, no, not sorry. Oh, she was like senior year of high school. She's like, Uncle, this is awesome. I would read this. And that's when I was like, yes, this is what I was missing. I was thinking in a cartoon way. My brain is functioning as a cartoon, as a comic book, and writing it out was not helping me. Writing it out kind of showed my mistakes of my grammar and my, where my weaknesses were. Um, so I just started taking it from there. Then I started to look for a person on Fiverr to draw out my work, and oh man, the scammers that I got, bro. The scammers that tricked me in saying that they will make my work come to life. And I was so excited. And, I would pay up front and everything. And then the deadline would come and I would get trash work. And I would be so upset. Um, but then it taught me how to find scammers, how to identify them, right? And so I started to be able to identify them from the tone of words that they were using. And I knew right from the beginning off of Fiverr who was a scammer, who was a real one. And I found a Malaysian guy, and he helped me a lot. Alhamdulillah, like he really helped me, and he drew it first in his way, in his style, in his art form. And then he was very honest with me. He said, listen, brother, I'm going back to art school and I don't think I'll be able to be dedicated to help you any further. But I do know this one artist. If you can talk to him, he probably won't want to work with you. But if you're consistent, he might want to hear you out. So I searched for him on Instagram, pinged him, ignored me, pinged him, ignored me, just kept on going after him basically until I finally got a message from him. I started commenting on his pictures a lot more and just saying like, listen, man, your images are awesome. I love it. Good work, whatever. So then he started to like DM me back, and then that's where we clicked. And then from there, alhamdulillah, like I tested him first because I fell for all those other tricks, before. So I tested him with 5 pages. I said, can you draw these 5 pages? I wrote, words out, and I told him, draw this in 5 pages. Pick as many panels as you want to do it. Just do it whichever way you want to do it. I'll leave all the freedom in your hands. Came back with something epic. And it's not in the comic books yet because this scene was like later on. We had a long discussion, and this scene was not fit for that beginning phase of the comic book. So it's coming in the fourth issue, inshallah. But yeah, so we started to talk, and like those 5 pages really opened up my heart to want to go for this full-fledged and say, you know what, all of these comic books that I've been reading, who's been showing Islam in a very bad light, and like I was saying earlier, I could pull out those comic books. They had Batman saying the Turkish Empire was a terrorist group. They had Captain Marvel, the girl, the Daisy girl. I don't know if you know Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Miss Marvel, I had a lot of problems with her from the beginning. Her whole storyline takes place in Jersey City, New Jersey, where I grew up, where I was born and raised, and she does not depict anything of that area in any way. There is a lot of Daisies, but by the vast majority, there's way more Arabs. Um,
Just to chime in just for a moment,
yeah,
the Disney Plus episode where they're like back in time in Pakistan, that was a lit
yeah,
episode. That's all I wanted to
that one
say.
was good. Yeah,
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 that
okay.
episode was great.
They nailed it. They nailed it right.
That
Okay,
episode was amazing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's great to hear, man. Alhamdulillah. Like that was a good. I mean, I felt like the Disney Plus, the acting was better than the comic books. but the comic books really did not show her in a good way. Like, and I was reading the comic books because I was excited. A Muslim character, yes, Marvel. They had a Muslim character before her. Her name was Dust, and
Hmm.
she was Afghani, and she was part of the X-Men, and she was a niqabi who had like a belly dancer dress on. It was all black. You could see all the curves of her body and everything. And I was just like, what the? Okay. This is definitely not a proper depiction of a Muslima. And all of her words were just like, may Allah, get you for what you said, or something like it was very like, no Muslim talks like that, bro. Like, what are you kidding me? Like, the dialogue, there was such a poor choice of dialogue. So when I saw Miss Marvel, I was happy because they made her a normal human being. They made her a normal girl. But then they came to this one scene where she looked at bacon and she was like, "Oh, how I desire to taste the flesh of the forbidden swine." And I was
Wow.
like, "No way in hell any Daisy girl in her entire life would ever say that. Are you kidding me? I don't care how whitewashed she is. She's never gonna say something like that."
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't see that happening either.
So it was just like little trip ups here and there that just kind of like triggered me. And those triggers were actually the reasons why I said, you know what? No, I gotta do this, man. I can't stand by and just complain about things anymore. I'm not gonna just sit here and say, imagine, and we should protest, and we shouldn't have these depictions, and we're gonna boycott Marvel because of their false narratives. Let's do something better.
I like how
Why
you
not?
say that. I like you say that. Napoleon said, if I'm not mistaken, if you want something done right, do it yourself, and that's pretty cool. You kind of just took it into your own hands. I
Let's just
like that,
make it
man. I
better.
really like that you did it yourself because I don't know. I'm really I admire those spirits that just kind of do the thing. Yeah, I just did it, and I don't really care how it's perceived. I just did it.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna make the sound effects in my comic books all in Arabic letters. And so like it was gonna be like the Japanese mangas, where they have like the Japanese sound effects, and then they'll just have like a little subtitle of what it says, like bang, bing, boom.
mm,
Um, but then I was discouraged when this one brother said, "You're already doing something that's very alienating to the majority of the people. You're gonna alienate them even further by doing something like that." And I was like, "You sure about
did
that?"
you
Like,
cut that guy out?
no, I took it to heart, and I said, "Okay, I'll take your word for it."
You know,
And so
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no,
It
you good.
just this just reminded me of something. I don't remember the names of the people in this story, but Sheikh Omar he shared it one time. Where it's like, there's this dude once upon a time, and he was like, uh, "Yo," he says to his buddy, "Yo, these Sahabas are getting like kind of old. Maybe we should like write down their stories or whatever. Like, we should go to talk to them and write what they say." And his friend's like you, like he just kind of like laughed at him. He's like, "Nah, man, like
Yeah,
that's a whatever idea." And so the guy's like, "I cut him off. I just cut him off. I never
yeah,
spoke to him again." I'm not saying that about your friend, but I'm just saying
yeah,
it just
yeah.
kind of
No, no,
reminded
I
me
hear
of
you.
that. Like it was funny. It's
I hear you.
funny.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah,
And
and
apparently,
it's you know what, certain little things do, like, and Allah knows best on why you accept certain things at certain times. But I did like reach out to a real legit calligrapher, who was an artist, who was known for different calligraphy style, like made up calligraphy style. So calligraphy in Arabic has a very rich history, and there's solid like 20 different styles that are legit, like documented in books that this is an official style. And for you to be a master in this, you have to do this for 20 years of your life. And so there's legit styles of Arabic calligraphy. This guy, he's a calligrapher for like graffiti, like a Arabic graffiti. Like he just uses his own imagination of how it might look, and it came out really dope. And I was like, I was very inspired with that because I was like, guy, like this is like awesome. Um, it's not a real style, but it is a cool style, and I like that. And I always grew up with graffiti, so
the thing behind you, what does it say?
Oh yeah, so this is it says El Forsan, and it kind of it's a picture of it, the word means the I guess the warriors or the spirited warriors. Forsan are like noble men, noble warriors, and the words, the letters are supposedly like different shapes of different like swords and knives and different you know I don't know if you could see it, but like it's supposed to look like swords, knives, and shields, and a whole bunch of different like little staff and whatnot. And so I just it's a graffiti style of Arabic that I made up for um, a youth group back in Jersey City when I had my first youth group. I was like, mentoring the young kids and whatnot. And I was like, guys, we need a name. We're going to be a basketball team or whatever. We're going to play at the boys club. We need a name for ourselves. And then, they said, oh, we like this. You spoke about El Fursan. You spoke about like what a warrior is in Islam. So like he was a regular farmer. He was a regular man. But then when it was time for, war, he would not back down. He would not cower. He would stand up and defend his land and defend his family. And we really appreciate that. We want to be like those people. And so we made this logo of what it would look like. And that's what it was. I mean, they were my inspiration for making that. Yeah, and so it always lived in my heart, that group in specific, those youth, that name, their um, attachment to wanting to aspire to be noble people, basically, and never backing down from injustice and fights and stuff. That kind of character was something that stuck with me for a very long time, and so they are one of the clans in my comic book series. um, and so there are five different clans, and that was the first clan. I made four other clans after that.
So, dude, you said a lot, and there's a lot to unpack. And the first thing I want to begin with was you said that it taught me when they rejected you, it taught me. And not just that rejection, but other things as well. All that, the whole process taught you. And I love how you said that because it was making me think of something. Last night I had dinner with two of my very good friends, and these guys are great, and I usually feel like, wow, I can really express myself to these people and they listen and they hear me out. But it was funny because last night in this 6 hour conversation that we had, I felt like I wasn't heard. I felt like they
Mm,
were talking it up and I was listening, but I wasn't heard. And at some point, it kind of built up to where I was a little upset. I was about to say something, but then I remember sitting in my friend's truck in the back seat, and I like paused. Wait, no, this is beautiful. This is a learning
yeah,
moment. I
yeah,
can learn from these guys. Like they're talking whatever they're talking about. I can just listen and learn. And so that's
yeah,
the way I've noticed I've been treating my life lately for like the past month or two. Alhamdulillah, where it's like, wow, like if something doesn't work out, if I fall short or whatever, it's like, this is beautiful. This is a learning moment. I can learn something here.
yeah.
And so I'm curious, how long did it take you? Like, how long has this process been to where this happened? Because you said you had this idea when you were 15, but
Yeah.
in to getting this to be something tangible, how long did it actually take?
Yeah, so I mean it was scary, trying to like going through all those failures, and then I then had this idea of like, okay, well, let me make the company first. Maybe if I make the company name Noon Comics, all right, let me make a logo for myself, and daddling and drawing, and finally coming out with something that captured a Muslim-ish feel to it, with the like a symbolic, N that captured the letter Noon in Arabic in it as well.
Why, by the
Um,
way, Noon Comics? Why that
oh
name?
yeah. So I remember once I read the tafsir, and I believe it was Sa'di or Al-Baghawi, one of the tafsir for Surah Al-Qalam, Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. Uh, ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون. Like the whole like first five verses of Surah Al-Qalam, which talks about basically like it's the pen, it's the name of the surah of the pen. And it starts off with this letter Noon, and it talks about Noon wal qalam wa ma yasturun, and the pen that has written. And so I always felt like I was gonna draw, like I always wanted to learn how to draw and be an artist and all that. But I took years, like 10 years of my life trying to figure out how to put shapes together to draw. And I was horrible at it. So I finally submitted to say I give up on drawing. I'm gonna stick with the writing. And then when I made that decision, I started to read the tafsir of those 5 verses, those first 5 verses of Surah Al-Qalam, and it talked about the beautiful manners of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and that how he is not insane, and how the pen has written the past and the future and the present. And so, to kind of submit and act with the most beautiful of perfected mannerisms, and he did that. The Prophet ﷺ did exactly that. And so when I read those verses, I felt like that letter Noon kind of like encapsulated it. That letter Noon as well in Arabic was growing up. There was a movement by a group of people who called themselves the infidels, a group of people in America who were like extreme Christian, who called themselves the infidels, and they branded themselves with the letter Noon, like with fire, like branded themselves like on their chest and stuff. And they claimed that that was because they were Nasraniyin, or those who support Isa alayhi salam. And so we support Isa alayhi salam way more. And I felt like we had the rights for that branding more than anyone, but we don't brand and we don't tattoo. Um, so I kind of felt like, they were trying to hijack a letter from our language and put it for themselves. And I was like, no, you guys made fun of my language all my life. You guys made me look like a terrorist all my life, and don't try to make it something honorable now and brand yourself with it like it's something cool. Like, no, we deserve that. So that happened like when I was like maybe 18 or 19 years old. But all of those incidents, and then when I was reading also the tafsir of the Qalam, that when they explain the letter Noon, what does it mean? And then they explain how Noon is actually like, another word for a whale, and
Hmm.
how deep the whale could get in the
Hell,
ocean.
wow, that's crazy.
It's and so yeah, so that's awesome. A nice flex there. So
Oh,
you like
thank you.
whales, huh? You like
You know, ever since I started pondering on the story of Yunus, the Prophet Yunus, alayhi salam, yeah, whales really got my attention. Because, like, man,
yeah,
that giant beast at the
beast.
bottom of the sea, I mean, that's something. It's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and it's like how they could withstand all the pressures of the depths, and who knows what they see and what they record in their brains, but they're conscious living mammal creatures as well, and they're very gentle at the same time, and they're very communicative. They talk to each other, and they get lost, and they worry about their kids. And so, like, respectfully, like the Noon like also came to that conclusion of like how deep this mammal can get. And I was thinking, like, what, how deep writing could get as well.
Wow.
um
All these layers of symbolism. Wow. That's Noon
yeah, and
Comics.
yeah, subhanallah. It was definitely a very specific choice of, and then the coming up with the logo itself, like I still have sketches of my old, sketches of what I thought it was going to look like. Then I just started to like play around with it until I finally got to this, like, N with the N and a noon with the Arabic noon in there, with like the moon and the star in there as well. That kind of like symbolizes like a Muslim vibe to it. Um, so yeah, all like a bunch of different little things here and there that kind of just made me feel like it was me, and if it was going to symbolize my thought process and my desires for sharing stories and sharing the Sahaba stories and sharing all my notes, literally like a lot of the pages, like some panels, like you'll see like they kind of like the dialogue doesn't like add up, but they were just my notes growing up. Like I have a notebook of all of my notes when I used to sit in lectures. And then when I had the Note phone, I took all my notes on my phone. And so the best thing about Samsung is I guess when you upgrade your phones, all of your notes come with you. And
Wow.
I found notes from back in like, 2012, 2011 of me sitting with, Sheikh Salah Hassawi's classes and Sheikh Abdullah Doro and, Sheikh Walid Basuni and, um, Sheikh Mamdour and like all of these sheikh, and then I'm finding like all of my old notes with them. And I'm like, man, if only I could remind myself of these notes in real life. And then I just like would say, if I was to remind myself of this specific point, what would I say? Well, how would the situation be? And it would come out in this way, and I'll just add that note in there, and I'm like, ah, there you go. Now I'll remember that note a lot more. And so it was my own way of like keeping my notes to myself and for the world if anybody else wanted them.
Another thing I was curious about was you mentioned that you reached out to someone to do the artwork for you. So being a creative, there's moments where it's like you want everything to be done your way, but then you realize that when you work with other people, it's like, okay, wait, we have to, I don't want to say necessarily compromise, but like you have to find a way to work together. Was it easy or difficult for you to cooperate with the people that were working with you on this project to help shape your vision?
Yeah, no, it's that's a very, very good and deep question. I am very much of like, I did all of this. I want this all to be myself, and I want this all. But honestly, like I recognize my weaknesses, and I didn't let my weaknesses play me for never making a step after that. So I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna have to recognize that I am giving this up, and I have to take whatever they give me as well. And then we agreed on like some a way on how we could make changes. So if there was a panel that just kind of didn't capture what I was actually trying to say, like I don't know if in issue three, if you got to that page where the two girls were kind of like talking to each other, and there was like a dialogue back and forth. So there's this one page like that he just did not capture what I was trying to say. And so we went back and forth several times, and he sketched it in five or six different ways, and it was wrong every time until I started to say like, okay, I started to cut and paste little parts from one of the sketches and paste it on, and just like kind of on all on my little phone. And I just said I was thinking something like this, and I kind of showed him with his own work what I kind of was thinking of, and then he came out with something way better. And he's like, I got you, say less. And when he came back with that, and I was like, man, you nailed it, bro. Like, and this is five times better than what I thought it was going to be. Thank you. And so giving that freedom to people, letting go a little bit and giving them some freedom, they will surprise you. And it will encourage you on communicating better and choosing the communication technique that they will receive. Some people are audio, they'll hear and they'll listen and they'll nail it. Some people are visual learners, right? And so they'll visually, you have to show them visually what you mean, and then they'll nail it. And so you'll start to recognize when to use which with who, and that's going to make you a better person at the end of the day as well. It's going to make you grow.
Those two girl characters you mentioned, I really like the banter between them. When
Mhm.
I write anything, there is without a doubt some piece of me in whatever character, some piece of me, and that varies depending on who it is. With all the characters that you presented in this universe so far, do they all carry a piece of you within them?
Oh man, yeah, definitely, 100%. And it's funny because like one of my nephews, he actually nailed it. He was like, "That is Ammu Osama." Like my nephew is half Bengali and half Egyptian. My brother married a Bengali sister, and so he's super smart kid, man, mashallah. And he's probably one of my only nephews that actually read the comic books. All my other ones just like they like the art and stuff, and they just want to have it, but he actually read them.
This is another thing I want to ask you about, but I want you to
Yeah.
finish your thoughts on this thing here.
Yeah, no, and so like he read issue one and he's like, oh my God, that's Osama right there. Like that is all 100% Osama. And I was like, which one? He's like the old man and Ahmed, both of them in issue one, both of them are you. And I was like, tell me how. And he's like, that whole old man of like, laughing at the kid when he's messing up and stuff like that. You always do that to us. And then at the same time, that kid standing up and being, trying to do the right thing and standing up to the bullies and whatnot. Like you always tell us about standing up and standing firm or whatever. Like I saw that was all you. That whole thing, both of those characters were you, and he nailed it. He pegged me on that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's yeah, I definitely like you said, like I see myself in every character in to some extent.
No, that's awesome. And I remember thinking about this in particular when there's that panel where he runs into the girl that he likes.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
I love that. I loved it. That was amazing. That was amazing.
yeah.
But
Appreciate
something
that.
you're mentioning was like, hey, he's probably my only nephew that read my book or my comic.
Yeah,
Um, that's another thing that I think about because I remember when I wrote my book and I told my parents about it. My dad, he was like my number one supporter. He was so happy. He's like, wow, this is amazing. And my mom, she was like, oh, cool. Like it just it didn't really matter that much to her, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was like I noticed that with every single person that what found out the news, they reacted differently. It wasn't like a consensus view, like oh, like great or
yeah,
it's
yeah,
terrible. And so sometimes that can be demotivating when like you don't get a
yeah,
reaction that you
yeah,
want, right? Or like oh maybe just he's my only nephew that read it or something like that. But
yeah,
I realized over time like it's still a beautiful thing because it's like whoever needs to be inspired or moved by that piece of work, it'll come to them in the right time. Like Juice came out so
yeah.
many years ago, but I
Oh my
watched
God,
it
I
just
never. Yeah.
recently,
Wow.
and whatever effect it needed to have on me, it had on me
Yeah,
now. So it's like that. It's
yeah,
like you never know like who's gonna be moved by your works and when. So
yeah.
yeah, like
Uh,
do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. That's 100% truthful, man. Because, and it seems like the Quran is the best example of that. Like I could read the some verses and just breeze right through them sometimes, and then sometimes I'll come to these same verses and I'll just be like, whoa, like level unlocked. Like I could like this makes so much more sense now. Like I could understand a little bit more of everything because I understood this little thing a little bit more. And that it seems to always happen with the Quran more than anything with me. Like it's just like every time I read it, it's just like, I feel like it's and I don't read it enough. I know I don't read it enough. And I try to read it more. Like I know I'm slacking. Um, but at the same time, whenever I do and I get into it again and then it's just like get that groove and I'm just like, man, like how did I stay away from this? Like why did I stop doing this? And then it's just like, life, of course, you know, kicks in and then you get off of your scheduled routine and then you get off of it and then you come back to it again and it's just like, oh my gosh, like what was I doing? How did I miss this last time? Like this is so cool. I read this last time and I didn't even read this part. So yeah, like I get it.
Nice.
I get it.
Is there a particular Quranic verse or story that really resonates with you these
Oh
days?
man. Um Always, man. I was just reading in s- trying to remember Surah Al-Ankabut. And there was these couple of verses that I was just reflecting on recently, and I was just like, I mean, it's skipping my mind right now at the moment, man. It's probably all that stuff. But like, just like a couple of days ago, I was reading in Surah Al-Ankabut, and I was just like, man, um, it's like how we see it, like portrayed. It could have been the verses of like how the Ahwan al-Biyut, how the weakest of the houses is the house of the spider, basically. And Sheikh Ibrahim at Click was mentioning one time about those verses, on how like what makes a house weak. And here it's not talking about the strength of the web and the walls, because our houses today with the brick and mortar still weak when it comes in touch with a hurricane, right? It relatively like to what extent of what blow comes to it. And what makes it weak is he reflected and mentioned was that how the spider, when it gets married, the first thing it does is it turns on its husband. The widow turns on its husband and eats the husband. Then when it has babies, the babies eat off the mother, and then they separate and they all go their own separate ways and they make their own nests and they all do the same thing all over again. And so he was saying that that's what makes it the weakest of houses, is when the household itself is not meshed together, and they're not caring for one another, and they're kind of just like eating off of each other and just like not supporting each other. Um, and so that I think that was one of the things that just kind of like resonated recently with me, because it's you can see how that happens in some households. And alhamdulillah, does not, test, his believers in ways that they can't handle. But you get to see that happen in certain households, and then you start to say, wow, like it's scary. It's scary that um, this individual could be this brutal towards their parents and like not be caring for them and not care for their older age and not be patient with them and just kind of like want to run away from them. And it's scary, especially that I have daughters now, and seeing, that if I don't raise my kids now, right, to love and appreciate the household, that could be my house as well. And so I don't take it as like, wow, that house is so bad and it'll never happen to me. But it gets me worried that like this is a very real possibility that can happen. And so I need to pay attention to how I'm fostering the household and the people in the household, um, the respect levels and the love and between two siblings, you know to children. It starts from a very young age, and parents have an impact. Parents have a huge impact on how that flourishes.
What is it like being a father for you? What is the best part of it?
The best part of it, they surprise you every time, man. Like you think nobody's listening to you, but everybody's listening to you, and it's crazy when they start repeating you, and they start repeating it in appropriate times that reflect you, and you start seeing yourself in them, and you're just like, oh my god, why did you say it like that? Like my daughter, like she'll say some terms like what was I saying, uh what the heck. Like for me, like when something random happens, I'm like, what the heck? Like, why did that happen? And so like my daughter was like drawing or something like that, and then she was by herself in her own little world, and then something happened, and she's like, what the heck? And I'm like, no, no, don't do that. So seeing myself in that, like witnessing it, like get down to the next generation and just used in the same way that I use it, I'm like, no, oh, I gotta watch out.
That's very
Um,
interesting.
so yeah,
Yeah,
like
you think no one's listening, but everyone's listening. Wow.
it, and recording, and it's not just this podcast that's being recorded, there's real other things watching and recording with us.
Yeah, no,
And
I love how you say that because I think about it as a kid too. It's like, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of adults around me that didn't think I was listening. It's like, yeah, I was paying attention. I was
yeah,
listening, even though they didn't think it. Yeah.
yeah. And it is surprising that like being a father and witnessing that happen, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have an impact. I gotta be careful. I gotta be mindful. I gotta, pay attention a little bit more. And so that's one of the best things. Um, because yeah, like it doesn't sound like one of the best things, right? But like as Muslims, we try to be conscious in all of our day, like throughout our entire day, and we're conscious. What that's why we say the dua for in the car, the dua of the afghan in the morning, and before going to sleep and before going to the restroom, and all of these little things before we eat, after we sneeze, and all of these little things that remind us to keep us conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. Then we have the five daily prayers that kind of like fit in tune with that to keep you conscious as well, to kind of like fine tune your consciousness. And then you have your little children around you that will fine tune you even more and test your patience very much and test your knowledge as well. Um, we're talking about Santa Claus recently and how he could see me when I'm awake and when he could see me when I'm asleep and how he's going to give me gifts and how he's going to do all of these things. And I'm just like, what about me, bro? Like, I do this stuff. I see you when you're asleep and when you're awake. I give you gifts. Like, why don't you care about me as much as you care about Santa Claus? So, and of course, ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but like it's for the child, they have this vivid imagination that something else superior is, unseen, that's superior, and they're better than my parents. But the problem is when they associate that to Santa instead of Allah, and it's just like, I failed. Let me try this again. Let me try to explain this in a different way.
Dude,
And
what
just
you
trying to
said
get,
is really powerful.
yeah,
It's really
yeah,
powerful because I'm thinking about it,
of course.
and I feel like in the current day and age that we live in, I think that's what the culture kind of perpetuates. There's something greater and superior than like your parents out there, and they
Yeah,
constantly want you to chase to that. That's
yeah,
your role model, your icon, or whatever you place your faith in. And
yeah,
it's just a lie because this is the realness. These are the real
yeah,
people in your life, you know?
yeah,
It's
man. That's
wild.
deep. That's deep.
We're talking about
Hmm.
spiders. And of course, you've created this comic universe. About a month and a half ago, I watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I don't know if you've seen the film,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
but man, it surprised me. I mean, it really got me. Canon events, that was an insane storyline,
Yeah,
insane. And
yeah.
I've been pondering about that for a while as well. Do you have any thoughts on canon events? Because the way I was looking at it was, I loved how the film was trying to explore, hey, maybe it doesn't have to be a canon event. Maybe you could prevent it. Maybe you could change it.
Hmm.
What do you think about canon events, man? Do you think we can predict them? Do you think we can? I don't know. It's just an interesting concept overall. Canon
Yeah,
events.
yeah. No, it is. It's interesting. It's interesting to see not only Marvel doing that, but like DC Universe doing that, and like just all of their own personal takes on how canon events shape the universe and its outcomes. Um, like I don't know, one canon event. I don't know that if you're familiar with the Batman series, but there's this one time where Barry Allen saves his mom, but then he does not become the Flash, and then his Batman ends up dying. Like Bruce Wayne is the one that ends up dying, and then the father is the one that turns into Batman, Thomas Wayne, and the Joker turns in is Martha, his wife. She turns into the Joker, and that's the love hate relationship between them over their dead son Bruce Wayne, and that was a canon event in that realm. And then they show like a multiverse of like how that Batman was such a canon event that he was from an unknown world and how it ripple effect into the rest of the DC universe. Like the existence of Thomas Wayne instead of Bruce Wayne created a whole different like multiverse in itself, basically. Um, and so they have like these little mini series about it. Um, but that seeing how like everyone tries to explain these like canon events through their own artistic techniques, um, and then like having Islam like solidified in your heart and just knowing that nothing happens without Allah's will. And so like having that is a pillar in our faith. That is the one of the pillars of our iman, right? So the pillars of Islam are the actions that we perform, and the pillars of Iman are the faith, the things that we believe in, the unseen things that we believe in. And that's Allah, His messengers, His books that He sent down to guide mankind. his angels, the day of judgment, and qadar, or destiny, basically, and the day of judgment. Or I think I said the day of judgment. Anyway, but the qadar part was is the part that I'm talking about, which is Allah's pen had written, and it's been sealed, and it's the ink has dried, and so there is no canon event in our human life, but our imagination can imagine it. Like we could always imagine, like, Superman as a giant bunny rabbit instead of, the Man of Steel. We can imagine whatever we want to imagine, but that does not change the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection and knowledge of who every human individual is and what their actions and what their reactions and what that's going to lead for their children and their grandchildren and the history and the ripple effect in time. Um, that's all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge and has been written already. And we just have faith in that. So trying to change certain things that are not there makes you question, what are you really doing, right? I don't know if you ever watched the movie The Mowgli's Child, the cartoon. You know, um, it's an old Disney movie, but there's a song where the bear is saying the bare necessities of life, and he's saying this one phrase at the end of the song where he says, um, "Don't go about trying to chase things that won't change." And that's like his knowledge that he's sharing to Mowgli as this child, for so that he could live in the jungle, basically. And so trying to change something that won't change is like, just futile. That's like trying to touch the sun. Keep on chasing the horizon to try to touch the sun. It's futile. You're never going to touch the sun. It's not going to change your effort. No matter how much you exert your effort to chase the sun, to try to touch it, you're not going to get there, right? So there's certain things that are just there that you just have to let it be there, and don't waste your time on those things, and worry about what's actually around you, with those individuals that are around you, with those that you're ignoring, the ones that you're um, trying to stay away from.
Yes.
Everyone is in need of something, and
I
those are the ones that need your presence.
yes. No, I love what you said here. This is really amazing. It totally destroys Loki. But um well, I attended a funeral yesterday. It was very tragic. It was very, very sad.
I feel
And
lost.
I remember sitting there and just thinking to myself, in the face of death, all feuds fade away, you know? And it's like a sobering effect because I remember like because of Juice, I started listening to some of Tupac's songs and I was driving. It's like, oh, Tupac songs. I got
Nice,
myself an ice cream from Sonic.
nice,
But then I
nice.
remember that this funeral thing was happening, and I was like, "Yo, like that's just all distractions. It's whatever. Like, in the end, nobody cares about that stuff. When you look at death in the face, when you're there at that funeral prayer, you're like, wow, it's a sobering effect. That's the reality. And I see that as like when you're talking about chasing the sun, it's like chasing the world and everything in it. You're chasing the
Yeah,
sun, but you're never gonna get there, in
yeah,
spite of all your efforts. And so you just kind of have to settle down. Well, I don't know if I should use the word settle down, but you acknowledge reality for what it is and say, I'm gonna choose to be sober to the reality
yeah,
of life.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
But
that's what it
dude,
is.
dude, I this conversation so far has been awesome. Like honestly, I really see this. Like I feel like me and you could talk for hours because there's just so much you said, and I honestly did not get a chance to unpack all of it. Like there was a lot that I really wanted to talk about. But we're coming to a close, and I'm curious, do you have any
Yeah.
closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say but you didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
I mean, I love when you ask that question, and all of your your peers give the best answers, honestly. And it's scary, like being like, what are your final words, right? And like some of the stuff that we see from the Gaza situation, um, what were their final tweets, right? And we go back and we try to look at and like how their final words kind of like were echoed in time because their presence is not there anymore. And it makes me always think carefully, what would my last words want to be? And there's so much I want to say, like about everything, but what I really want people to do is take care of your parents, take care of your relationship with Allah. Like your life, I mean, some people's mental health is at stake, and you can make the difference in that person's life if you are sober to the reality. And you could save somebody's life. Just answering the phone of that person that's so annoying that you don't want to answer their phone anymore. Like those little slight little things could mean the world for other people. And just, your parents are the most worthy ones for that first before anyone else. And then after your parents, of course, it's just your relationship with your spouse and your children and your siblings and your immediate nuclear family. So invest in those people, invest your time, invest your efforts, and share your time. Don't be stingy with your time against them. Um, our time isn't granted. It's not. It's limited, and we don't know when it's going to be gone. And I hope my children forgive me if I didn't spend enough time with them. I hope my wife forgives me for not, getting her the tapioca that she always likes, and and everyone that I love, and hope they forgive me when I'm gone.
Beautiful, incredibly beautiful. Dude, I love how you're from Click, man. Click is such a cool masjid. When I go there, I'm like, yeah, this is the beach masjid, you know? It just feels it. I wanted to ask, are you a Kima Boardwalk fan?
Yeah, I definitely like to go to Kima. There's I like to feed the catfish at the Kima Boardwalk. I don't know if you know that little section, but there's catfish all over Kima Boardwalk. Like
I
you
was
could
not
throw
aware.
anything. Oh my God, you throw any French fry anywhere on that entire boardwalk, and there's going to be a ton of catfish that come up and eat it. So
Damn.
yeah,
Wow,
it's crazy.
that's epic. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Like, uh, Click's cool. Keen Boardwalk's cool. I think that's about all I had to say. But
Nice.
seeing that we still have like a couple more minutes, is
Yep.
there anything else?
I go sideways. No, I mean,
Are you Egyptian,
uh,
by the way? That was something I was wondering. Well, why was
oh
it
yes.
Cairo? Okay, okay, so you're Egyptian.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is papyrus that is glow in the dark. So if you put the light on it, then you take it away, it's
Wow.
supposed to like glow in the dark. It's just
Wow.
a cool thing that they do on papyrus paper. And papyrus is always interesting to me because it's one of the first forms of documentation on paper in cool
Yes.
ways. And they use plants for that, man. It's like the way they use the stem of a leaf and then they roll it out and then they weave it together and then they draw and write on it. So it's really cool stuff. But yeah, no, yeah, I am Egyptian blooded, born and raised in the U.S. In Jersey City, of course, was my hometown. But transplanted to Houston about 10 years ago now, and I'm happy that I'm here. Alhamdulillah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more, man. And inshallah, look forward to
Anytime,
that.
man.
Someday. Yeah, for sure.
Inshallah. I appreciate
But
you checking out my comic books, and it's
I really
definitely.
enjoyed reading them. I really did. I
I
was like, wow,
appreciate that, man.
this world building is building. So it's cool.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Well,
I suppose until
anytime.
next time, eh? Inshallah.
Absolutely. Inshallah, brother.